But do the gods, the demigods, do they have like mystical powers? And
Do the demigods? Yeah, they have mystical powers. Even people who are not demigods can also have mystical powers. Yeah. What happens is that the platform of this, like the heavenly planets, is where the demigods kind of reside, and they have. It's like in the mode of goodness. If you're in the mode of goodness, you go to the heavenly planets, right? And there you have like lots of enjoyment. You can enjoy lots of things. Everything's really nice up there. But it's different than what the spiritual world, because even the heavenly planets are still material, because you can still fall down and you still die. Technically, that's what it is. You're still born and you die. So if you got those like because you're not really free. People sometimes think, oh, I'm looking for freedom, stuff like this, and or have complete freedom. It's good if you have money and you have choices, fantastic. But we don't choose to be born in the body we're born. We don't choose to die when we want to die. So there's not that much choice out there. But when you're in the spiritual world, there is 100% freedom there. There is no that. There is no birth. There is no death. You're just eternal. Your soul is completely eternal in your original form, apparently. So
so that brings me on to reincarnation.
yeah,
Um,
crazy.
I imagine you believe in reincarnation. What's your
Yeah, man.
understanding of reincarnation?
So reincarnation is just like so it's the idea of how do you call it? So for example, you got this body right now, and when you're a baby, or let's say when you're 5 years old, do you remember what you look like a little bit? You kind of like yeah, like maybe
Seen pictures myself, yeah.
yeah, you kind of like got a different type of body, and we just kind of we change bodies as we get different ages, different groups, like as we get old and we start getting wrinkles, so things change in our bodies on a constant level. Actually, even our like livers and hearts and lungs change completely. Yeah, I think that's probably better. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, and even now, how do you call it? Our livers, hearts, and everything, all that also changes with the molecules. I think all the molecules change in your body every 7 years or something like this. So we are in constantly change. So technically, a lot of times we think that when we die, it just finishes and that is it. But why is it why with our experience, we have everything that's constantly changing and, transforming itself. And when we die, that just stops. The logic just stops there. What we actually believe is that actually the logic continues and you just change to a different body. You can go to an animal body, or you go into like a demigod body.
So does this consciousness, I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, does this consciousness go to a sort of purgatory, like what's in Christianity is called purgatory?
Yeah.
Does it go there, but like back to the spirit world and then come back down, or does it latch on to something nearby? Because the reason I ask that is because there's some theories that and this is sort of what I think as well. Like there's some theories that consciousness is another form of energy that we don't quite understand yet, or we don't understand at all yet. So in the same way that our brains, neurons fire using electricity, and that's effectively how we operate, the same as a machine,
Mm.
basically. But we understand the electricity, we understand how that works, we understand how our cells turn on and off,
Yeah.
we understand that more or less. Um, and, in the same way you've got magnetism, you've got electromagnetism, all these different forces, energies. Um, is consciousness just another one of those? And there's theories which say that when you die, your consciousness basically disperses as if it were a gas, and then it
Yeah.
latches on to things or people nearby. So a way to conceptualize that pretty easily is that and I was talking about this yesterday with my housemate actually, like if say if we walked outside right now and there are 10 people on the street and someone got shot and killed, that their consciousness would then ping into the people nearby, and it could cause real strong reactions in our body. Like if you think about it logically, seeing someone die shouldn't be more traumatic than hearing about someone dying, because people die all the time, happens all the time. People are always getting killed, people are dying in horrible ways, and it doesn't have a huge impact on us. But seeing that happen to someone, it can totally mess your life up,
Yeah.
even if you don't know the person.
Yeah.
And it's like logically, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense.
Mhm.
But one of the theories is, yeah, it latches onto you, and then part of their consciousness stays inside of you and just kind of like wreaks havoc for a while until it
Mm.
gets processed. So, what are your thoughts on that? Where does consciousness go when one dies?
So what we believe is that you call it consciousness is an expression of the soul. So we have our senses, the eyes, the ears, and all this. This is the body. It's like you said, like the robot or like the car, like the airplane, whatever it is. These are like what? But the consciousness is within that. So when you die, the consciousness goes, right? But actually, we believe the soul is Satchitananda, which is how do you call it? Eternal, knowledgeable, blissful, and has a form also. So that's Vigraha. So Satchitananda Vigraha. So um, yeah, when you die, what we say, what the most simple way of kind of putting it, of understanding it, is kind of like you go where kind of what your actions, like karma in a sense, well your actions, whatever actions you have has a certain type of karmic reaction. Right? If it's good or bad, you get karmic reaction for it. You can study this. There's books on like how karma works exactly. Which is technically what you're kind of asking now is exactly how karma works. Like where do you go? What happens when you do certain actions? What happens when you do certain things? Blah blah. Like I haven't studied that 100%, so I don't know exactly where where you go according to things. But you do know a few things. Like obviously, if you live a very sinful life, then you're probably going to go down to the hellish planets. If you live a very good life, of generosity and love and care, you're probably more likely to go up to the like higher planets, right? And what we try to do is try to skip even those and actually go straight to serving God. So what we try to do is just serve gods and love gods directly. Because when we do that, we actually water the whole plants. We water the leaf because it's not going
Hmm.
to serve any purpose. If you just water the leaf, it might serve the leaf purpose, but if you water the roots, then after the whole tree actually gets nutrition. So what we try to do is by serving gods, we actually serve, humanity in itself. So we go back to God. That's what we want to be. That's where we're going to find blissfulness. So in a way, we try to do that, and like, it depends on what you. I mean, there's a higher chance. I mean, the more you serve God, the more you think of God, the more you're going to go back to God. Um, but then after that, depending on your actions, there's like a like there's the Yamaharajas, which is the ones who come and judge you. Where you're going to go. Those are the demigods. Because again, the demigods come into place. They're kind of more like administrators of God. They kind of go, you do this, blah blah. So,
What would be
um,
called angels, I suppose, in
yeah,
Christianity.
angels and yeah, exactly, it's kind of the same thing, just different names. Um, so yeah, and there's different places and different situations that can happen to you, according to your karma or to what you've been doing or to how you think of life and stuff like this. So yeah, it really depends on. So this is what actually the interesting part about this is there is actually a science to it.
Hmm.
There's a science of your karmic reactions. So a lot of times they do talk about like if you've been very generous and you're very good and you're like this, then in your next life you're way more, you're likely to probably get, in a body where you're gonna just feel happy. So what we do see is people who are generally, and I've seen this just like you see this generally just normally, people who are just nice, kind, good-hearted people and stuff like this.
That it's not a challenge for them to be like
It's not a
that.
challenge to be like this. Um, Sometimes you see that's probably from their past lives or whatever, but you also know that, you see they're just happier people. They're happier people and stuff like this. And sometimes people are just born in the right families, so we do talk about it. So you could be just born in the right family or you could be born, you don't choose that. So that's your karmic reactions from your past lives. Depends on what you've done in your past life and you're born. There's actually a really interesting story I heard recently about a family of devotees who were with a child that was in a wheelchair and he had no legs, the child. But he was like really, they were like really dedicated to the Hare Krishna movement. They were serving, they were preaching. Even the child was chanting Hare Krishna on his beat, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare. And he was chanting all the time, and but he had his face like it was like this. It was always like really angry, but he's always there. You know what I mean? But he couldn't move. He was in his wheelchair, and it seems like he hated his parents, and they didn't understand. So this was in South America. So what they did is they got this guy who goes into regression, past lives, and what they did is that they got I think they brought the father underneath hypnosis, so
Hmm.
they go into to see his past lives. So they bring him underneath, and what happens? They see that he's in charge of a farm, and they have horses, and they have like this one horse that's like doing really well and it's making a lot of money. So they really focus on this one horse, and they're trying to make some cash. And they travel around the world, well not around the world, but around America. I think they saw a flag or something, and try to make this horse win. And the mother went on the hypnosis, and she, what happened? And she, oh yeah, she was like the one who was feeding the horse, so she saw herself also feeding the horse. And then after that, they wanted to get the child, but the child didn't want to, or he was like hectic about it. And so he eventually said, okay, I'll do it. and he goes, but he doesn't go under hypnosis. So they didn't get some like doctor's permissions or things like this to give him some, I think, CBD or something.
Mhm.
So then he goes under hypnosis, and then he goes into his past life, and he comes back and he starts saying, "Yeah, I was the horse. I was the horse in this family, and they were taking me, and I just didn't want to run. I just didn't want to walk anymore because they really like fucked him up by injecting him with some hormones for his legs so he could run more, so they could make more money. So he was born in this family. So you just and we have there's different also like different situations that we encounter in this life that's going to help us to learn things that we haven't learned in our past lives that we have to learn in this life. So sometimes you find yourself in a really hard situation or in a really hard family or something like that. It's technically one of the reasons is because you've done something that you really need to learn about in this life and try
Mhm.
to sort that out now. So it might be hard, it might be tricky, it might be painful, but if you could just work on it, try to see how you can learn from the situation as you improve, and then yeah, so